My name is Laurel Benson Brown. I am the Dean of the Las Cruces chapter of the American Guild of Organists. We have at either entrance some pink cards if you want to be on our mailing list, so please fill that out. And then you'll receive regular updates about our programs. After the concert, we will have a question and answer session with John for anyone who's interested in talking about his music as well as looking at his music. We have some of his music on the piano, and the sheet music, if you're an organist or know someone who's an organist, the sheet music is free. The books are not. You have to order the books, and there's an order form for you to fill out. And also, immediately after the concert, for those of you that are not interested in talking to him or looking at music, we have a reception over in Jones Hall with a cake, veggies, and coffee. Coffee and tea, I believe.
I'm going to put this very large, heavy book up here, and I'll tell you what it's all about in a little bit later. Let me start with my trumpet entrada. Thank you all for being here. thank you. Did Howard return from the wild? So does everybody have a program who wants one? If you put your hands up, I think we can make sure everybody has a program. I will be announcing the pieces as we go. So, and I'll tell you why Howard had to go and make some more programs. You're a wonderful audience. This is terrific. It's quite unusual to have over 100 people show up on a Sunday afternoon for an organ recital, so thank you very much. I really appreciate it. It's making me very excited to share my music, and that's why I'm here. I've written nearly 1,000 pieces of music in the last 35 years, and I decided a while ago that I really should get out and travel around the country and share them with as many people as possible. Howard, I see some people coming in at the back, so I'm sure they would like a program. We got some there? Okay, great. So I decided I'd like to try to share my music in all 50 states, and today this is state number 41. So I've really been traveling around. My wife Karen comes with me. She also sends me signals when it's time to stop talking and doing a bit of playing. But yes, right. Okay, but I do like to explain what's coming up next. So you'll see on your programs, the next section is called From a Green and Pleasant Land. That refers to my homeland of the United Kingdom. As you will know by now, I did not grow up in Virginia, where I now live. And the United Kingdom is formed of 4 different countries, England being one. And the first tune, Gopsel, was written by one of England's most famous composers with a German name, George Frederick Handel. And Handel only wrote 3 hymn tunes. This is one of them. And I grew up singing this tune, and it's not particularly well known over here, so I'd like you to hear it. So the first tune you're going to hear is an English tune written by Handel. The second melody was written actually in Iowa in 1872 by a Methodist minister named Louis Hartzog. But for some reason, the Welsh took this tune as their own, and they sing it in Welsh. That funny name there on your program, Gwahoddiad, that is the Welsh translation of welcome voice. And when you go home today, if you put that funny name, Gwahoddiad, into YouTube, along with Royal Albert Hall, you'll be able to hear and watch 400 Welshmen singing this beautiful tune in the Royal Albert Hall a number of years ago. And it's really spine-tingling, so I do suggest that you do that if you like the melody as much as I do. So then we go up to Scotland for the Scottish tune, Oh Wally Wally. And I'm playing this in the arrangement of a little trio, which means the organists here know what is involved in playing a trio. You have one hand doing one thing and another hand doing another thing, and your feet doing something completely different. So it can be a little bit mind-bending. In fact, Johann Sebastian Bach wrote 6 fiendish trio sonatas to torture his son, Wilhelm, who I don't think was practicing enough. But this is a slower trio, so I think we'll be okay. And then the last piece, Turlough O'Carolan's Donkey. And you're thinking, what on earth is a Turlough O'Carolan's Donkey? Turlough O'Carolan was a blind, virtuoso, 17th century Irish harpist. And now you're thinking, I don't believe there ever was a blind 17th century virtuoso Irish harpist, but there was. He lived from 1670 to 1738. In other words, almost about the same time as Johann Sebastian Bach was writing amazing works for organ in Germany. But O'Carolan was sort of like the Stevie Wonder of his day. He really was a bit of a rock star in Ireland. But he needed to make a living. So he would go and stay with a wealthy family for about 6 months, and he would teach the lady of the house and the daughters to play harp, and then to curry favor with the master of the house, he'd write some music and he'd name it after his host. and he'd get paid for all of this, he'd make his living, and then after 6 months he'd say goodbye and he'd move on to another wealthy family. And somewhere along the way, apparently, someone gave him a donkey for his transport to get from one place to the next. So that's the theory behind Turlough O'Carolan's donkey. And I've taken a tune that he wrote for Lord Inchiquin to make this arrangement, and in the middle I use a technique called basse de cromhorn to make a sound like the donkey. So if in the middle of this piece you hear something that reminds you of Eeyore from the Winnie the Pooh cartoons, don't think that's a mistake. That means that you really are understanding the descriptive nature of this piece of music, because I'm trying to show you what the organ can do. So there we are. That's a quick tour through 4 pieces from my homeland, and then I'll come back and we'll do something related to America. So 4 pieces from the United Kingdom. you. I hope you enjoyed listening to the donkey as much as I enjoyed playing it. That's really fun to do. So now let's cross the Atlantic and talk about some American folk songs. I've lived here for 35 years, but actually this first song, Shortening Bread, I remember singing in England at an all-city chorus when I was about 7 years old, so that's a good long time ago. So that is a tune from the South that clearly made its way over internationally. Then Shenandoah is a tune that's associated with what is now my home state of Virginia, a very beautiful memory. And Oh My Darling Clementine is more from the West Coast. So in those first three pieces, I have music from the Deep South and from the East Coast and the West Coast. But I did want to talk a little bit about the fourth piece in this section, the 4 New Mexico folk songs. And that's where this book comes in, because when I travel around, I like to try to find music from the area that I'm visiting and then try to make some new arrangements. It's always interesting to me whether my audience knows about these folk songs or whether they haven't heard them because they've fallen into disuse. So I go on the internet and find a book that says, New Mexico folk songs, and this is what showed up. This is not my copy, it belongs to Karen, who's sitting over there. And when I said I was going to arrange some songs from this book, she got very excited, and we're doing a world premiere. This is the first time this piece has been heard. But I took 4 of the songs out of this book, and this next section is only going to be played on the keyboards. Organists call them manuals. And this organ has 2 different manuals, 2 keyboards, and I can use those to set up different sounds. And obviously for the louder music, I can use the pedals as well. But folk songs are rather special because it's really the melody and the words that are important. And believe me, you don't need me singing to you this afternoon, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about the words for these 4 folk songs because I think they really sort of sum up a lot about folk music around the world. And excuse my Spanish because I speak a little bit of French and German and Italian, but no Spanish. So you can correct me afterwards. So the first piece, Yo no me quiero casar. I don't want to get married. So I'll read you just the first verse. I don't want to get married. I don't want to get married because a woman to my taste cannot be found. And there are about 10 verses of all the reasons why tall women are too tall and short women are too short and fair women are always argumentative. And my conclusion is that probably the chap singing the music is no great catch himself. But so then we move on to a little bit of fantasy. The next song, El Señor Don Gato, The Lord Sir Cat. And this is a song about a cat who wears silk stockings and little embroidered slippers. And he's sitting on a roof one day, and a very attractive lady cat walks by, and he's so surprised and smitten that he falls off the roof and breaks every bone in his body, which he must be a very bad cat. If you ever watched a cat fall there, it's amazing how they land on their feet. But that's what happens when you wear silk stockings and embroidered slippers. Anyway, his friends took him out to bury him, and they took him out through the sardine factory, and the smell was so powerful it restored him to life. So there we have the story of the Lord Sir Cat, and that has its own dainty little melody. Then the third one, Los Diez Mandamientos. Let me read you just the first verse of this one. Take care, love of my life, and cause of my torment. It is for you that I've broken the 10 commandments of God. So then we get a whole song about how to break the 10 commandments, which I probably should not be talking about in church. And finally, the last song, Don Simone, first verse. Don Simone, I am 80 years old, I am well and give thanks to God, but in this fatal corrupted world, I see an atrocious scandal. So he starts talking about how all the ladies don't wear decent clothes the way they used to wear when he was young, and how all the young men behave abominably, and he goes on grumbling. And what I get out of this is he just wishes he was young again so that he could be doing all these scandalous things. So now the interesting thing is that these tunes are all different, but they're all very much the same. And so this reflects the culture and the people who are singing them. So instead of playing them one at a time for you, I've sort of linked them together, and it might not be very clear when I'm going from one to another, but this will, I'll make sure you know when I've finished. And meanwhile, is that a question over there? Do you have a question? No, okay. Meanwhile, I would suggest if you hold your applause until I come back, until I finish the section, because otherwise I'm playing lots of short pieces, and organists love to hear applause, don't get me wrong, but it seems to work that the program's in sections, so if I play the section for you and then you can, clap 4 times as loud if you like. If it's merited, and then I'll come back and tell you what's coming next, and that way we can move through the afternoon. But thank you to Karen for bringing this enormous book, and you're about to hear 4 of the tunes collected in here by a wonderful, very scholarly and learned man named John Donald Robb, who studied at Juilliard and also went and studied in France with a very famous lady named Nadia Boulanger, who taught just about every person who went over to study in Paris. So before we get to the 4 New Mexico songs, we'll have Shortening Bread, Shenandoah, and Oh My Darling Clementine. And I hope you just sit back and listen to the quieter stops on this organ. I'm trying to make a delicate sound and match that with the essence of these songs. Thank you. Thank you very much. I enjoyed researching a little bit of the history and culture of this area, and I hope you enjoyed listening to the result of that. Now I get to play some of my favorite pieces. So how about that? You would not know the tune Westminster New, on which I'm going to play a trumpet tune, because the only remaining copy until recently was framed and hanging on the wall of a friend of mine in Wilmington, Delaware. And I went to play at his church. For those of you who are organists, it's Tony Thurman, the Director of Development of the AGO. And he asked if I could resurrect this tune because it had been written by one of his predecessors, a man who was organist at the church in the 1960s. And that's something I could not resist. English organists love playing trumpet tunes, and there's a reason for that. Back in the 18th century, when Johann Sebastian Bach was writing works for really big, sophisticated, well-developed organs, over in England, the poor organists had rather wimpy little instruments with hardly any pedals. But what they did have was they had really nice trumpet stops. So they had pipes that sounded like trumpets. So not surprisingly, a lot of the early English composers wrote trumpet tunes, and you know many of them. A very famous one is the Prince of Denmark March, which I bet some of you might have had at your wedding. And then there's a man named John Stanley wrote some very famous tunes. Anyway, I couldn't resist the opportunity to write a trumpet tune, and this piece really lifts my heart when I play it. I hope you feel the same way. The second piece, the aria in D. Now, I have to tell you, do any of you remember in the 1970s a man called Procol Harum and a song called A Whiter Shade of Pale, right? It happens that the man who wrote that and who sang about skipping the light fandango and turning cartwheels on the floor, he went to the school about 3 miles up the road from where I went to school, so we had a little bit of rivalry going. Gary Brooker was his name. He passed away recently. Quite impressive. That song has been covered over 1,000 times. So Whiter Shade of Pale was a big part of my growing up, and you might think that the harmony of this aria is a little bit like a whiter shade of pale. But he got that harmony from Johann Sebastian Bach, because it's also the harmony you find in what is known as the air on a G string. So I hope you enjoy the aria. The hornpipe in D is probably the piece I'm most often asked to send the sheet music. That was written for a girl who grew up in my church, and she was getting married to a Navy guy. And she asked if she could have some special music written for the recessional when they were leaving the sanctuary. And so I thought, well, a Navy guy, maybe a hornpipe would be good. And I wrote that piece, and I shared it at the AGO National Convention in Boston in 2014. And somehow it's sort of gone around the world. I've had emails from Perth about this piece. Perth, Scotland, and Perth, Australia. So that shows you the reach. And not so long ago, I got an email on Monday from my publisher saying, someone's trying to get the hornpipe. Can you send a copy to Norway? They need it by Saturday for a wedding. So, thanks to the technology today, which we have to recognize contributes a lot to what musicians can do, I sent the file off, and a lady in Norway had it for her wedding as well. So I really hope you enjoy the hornpipe. I suppose it's my best known piece. And composers will tell you, we never know when we write music what is really going to grab the attention of our audience. So it's just a really strange thing. I do know there's someone here today who's anxiously awaiting Wayfaring Stranger, because he told me that before we started. And that's it's a sort of spiritual, also it's been used as a sea shanty. And I made an arrangement for a friend in North Carolina, and I'm happy to share that with you. And then the Fantasia on Leone is the hymn tune Leone, Our God of Abraham Praise, is the common text for that. And it has roots in the Jewish tradition as well as the Christian tradition. I was commissioned to write a suite on that tune, and this is the very last bit, which is sort of like the big finish. So it's a lot of noise in a short time, and that's what will finish up this next little section. Thank you. I played that last piece on the largest pipe organ in the world, which is in Boardwalk Hall in Atlantic City. And I don't think I've ever made so much noise in my life. It was wonderful. Oh my goodness, that was fun. But it was pretty much fun playing it here too. A while ago, I decided I wanted to write a piece of music that I could use to show off as much as possible of just about any pipe organ that I might come across. So I decided to take an Irish folk tune and make some variations, a suite of variations, and that's what I'm going to play for you now. I'm not going to tell you what the folk tune is, you're going to have to guess. Let me tell you, I think just about everybody knows this tune, and you're going to be surprised because you won't know it as an Irish folk tune. It started out, well, it can be traced back to at least 1745 for the third Jacobite rebellion, which I'm sure you all remember from your school days. And then in the mid-1800s, it became appropriated as a sea shanty, and so I think you're going to know this tune as a sea shanty. So I'll start out by playing the theme, and the first variation is an aria, because I believe the world can never have enough arias. An aria is just a beautiful melody. Then I'm going to play a duo, which is only 2 notes at one time, and I'm going to play those on what organists refer to as a 4-foot stop, which means it's going to sound 1 octave higher than you might actually expect to hear. So this is one way that you can get to hear something a little different out of the organ. The next piece is called intermezzo, which means the piece in the middle. But it doesn't sound very romantic to say the piece in the middle, but if you give it the Italian name, intermezzo, everybody says, oh, wow, he's going to play an intermezzo. Great, that must be worth listening to. Actually, the intermezzo is just to give me time to summon up the courage for the next movement, which is a solo on the pedals. I'm sure you're going to be able to see that on the screen up there. Thank you, by the way. Thank you to everybody who worked to provide the technology for today. This is really quite special. So you should be able to see my feet frantically at work. I've described this as 55 seconds of sheer terror for the organist, which I hope does not become 55 seconds of sheer terror for the audience. And I never really know when we start out how we're going to finish up. But when I ask myself, well, why did I write a solo for pedals? The answer is very, very easy, actually. You, the audience, love hearing the poor organist sweating, playing something fancy on the pedals, so at least we're going to give it a try. And then the finale brings it all to an end, and in case you're sort of wondering, when on earth is this piece going to finish, you'll suddenly hear just a little snippet of the most famous music ever written for the pipe organ, which is the beginning of Johann Sebastian Bach's Toccata in D minor. And I throw that in just as homage to the great Johann Sebastian Bach. And it also gives you fair warning that we're about to go into the last few seconds of this suite of variations. So having said all that, I'll return to the organ for the Fantasia on an Irish folk tune. And your first task is to figure out what the tune is. Thank you. Thank you, that really is a lot of fun. Hard work, but fun. I can't believe it. The afternoon just seems to have vanished. Here we are at the end. So I'd like to offer some thanks to the people who've made this possible, to the Las Cruces chapter of the American Guild of Organists who invited me to play, and everybody who's been involved in that. I'm not going to go into names because I'm going to forget so many, but we have the chapter that has invited me, and really you're all invited to come over and enjoy some fellowship afterwards. For organists, I'm going to be staying here and discussing my music, and I have music to share with you, because that's really the point of what I'm doing, is to share the music. I've actually played over 200 of my own pieces in various recitals over the years, so it's really all about sharing the music. But do go and enjoy some fellowship with my colleagues. That's really about it. I'm just very grateful for you for taking time on a Sunday afternoon to come and listen to some organ music, and I hope you leave with your hearts uplifted by the beautiful music from this rather special instrument, and come back and listen to some more. So to finish up, I like to play some patriotic music, and often patriotic music goes through lots of different patriotic tunes, but I'm going to play two arrangements on one tune. The tune Materna, you will know it as America the Beautiful. So I'm going to start with a quiet arrangement and then finish with a more boisterous arrangement, a loud postlude. And then at the end, I'll be happy to say hello and meet you. But thank you all for showing up, and thank you to those who've made this possible.